Well, you have finally got here. You are listening to the Erskine Music Podcast. Here, by popular demand, we discuss life, culture, Christ, and of course, music. These half-hour broadcasts are perfect for a commute, coffee time, chat, or any other gap in your schedule where you want to put great content. So without further ado, let's join the conversation today, already in progress.
Yep. Yep. Look, you guys are doing too much. Y'all are doing way too much. Look, all I want to do is I want to come in, I want to sit in the chair here, and I want to do a live stream show. Is that too much to ask? And then I get on the internet and y'all are jumping out of planes. Y'all are doing too much out there. This dude done jumped out of a plane with no parachute. Look, you can give me 2, 3, the backup parachute, and then a couple of guys around me to help me out. I still might not jump out of the plane. I might jump out of the plane if I had all that. But this dude is trying to jump out of a plane, He already did it. Jumped out of a plane, no parachute, landed on a trampoline. Y'all are doing too much. I just got to say, all I want to do is just have a guest on, have a nice little interview, give you guys some content that you can come to appreciate and enjoy in the Erskine Music Show. And y'all are doing this. Every time I turn on the internet, every time I'm scrolling social media, y'all are always doing something more. So I guess at some point I'm gonna have to jump out of a plane, do an interview with somebody, do a couple of backflips, land on a trampoline, and then dunk a basketball to get some views on this thing. Oh well. Well, we'll just do the Erskine Music thing. That's what we do on this show. We got special guests coming on today. It is Billy Gaines. Billy Gaines. And if you're here to see Billy Gaines, you will see him here in just a few moments. Billy Gaines is on the show today. It is true. It is not a myth. It is all true. He is a 2-time Dove Award-winning Billy Gaines, who has inspired audiences for more than 4 decades, folks, spreading the gospel through song, television, radio, albums, and now he has a book that we're going to talk about today. And live performances, he's done multiple, not just one, but multiple National Promise Keepers conferences. Masterful performer. I was going on and looking at some of his performances from First Baptist Dallas. So good. And he has a unique vocal style that spans musical genres and has been described as smooth, captivating, and anointed. All right, that's Billy Gaines. He's coming on the show here in just a few moments. All right, with all of that in mind, let's get to it today. We got to speed up because we want to have as much time as possible for the guests. Erskine Music Show. According to your bio, it says that you are a published author of a book called The Other Side of This Trial, My Story, His Plan, His Hands, that was released in November 28th of 2023. So the book has not been out long. You and I had lunch together and we began talking about that. And I said, hey, I want to have you come on the show and I want you to share with the people the purpose behind this book. And so tell us a little bit about this book with reference to why you wrote this book and what this book is about. And then we'll start getting into where people can find it.
Well, it's really about, more than anything, it's about the faithfulness of God over my lifetime. The way that I actually got started writing it, though, was my daughter had given me a book from my grandkids, and it was like for Father's Day or something. And it was entitled Grandpa, Tell Us Your Stories. So I started trying to fill out this book. And I got to the pages where they're asking me different things about where we went to school, my parents, and different things about history. And it was so short, I realized, man, I can't even talk about anything here. So I decided I would just do a little chronicle for my grandkids. Man, I started writing, and it's as if the Lord just turned on a movie in my brain, and I just began to just really just write down the things that were literally showing on this movie, man, my life, one thing after another. So that's how I got started. And so it turned into a book when initially it was only supposed to be something for my grandkids. And even when I finished it, I felt like, well, if it's only, a chronicle for my grandkids to know about me, that's enough. But it ended up, I finding some people who loved it, thought it was a great story, and they wanted to publish it. So
Sure. And since you've released it, what have you seen in terms of people's response to this book?
well, what I've seen, the greatest thing that I've seen is what I've hoped for. I've seen another number of people who've been inspired to finish their book and to tell their story and to realize how important their story is, even if it doesn't seem as big as someone else's story.
Mm.
In the eyes of God, what he does in our lives, there's no way to measure if what happened in my life is more important than what happened or less important than what happened in anyone else's life. And I guess the main thing I'm glad to know is that it's causing people to, which is what I really hoped, it would cause them to look at their own lives and begin to connect the dots and begin to see the hand of God and his faithfulness manifest in their lives in areas where they would have never even noticed that before without simply focusing on it. And so what I've found that it helps, and what I've intentioned also, is that it will cause people to focus with gratitude and pay attention to the details of the hand of God in their own lives.
That's amazing. I'm working on a book myself on leadership. And there's so many times that I don't know if this was maybe something that you had to deal with, but there are so many times when I've gone and I've started writing and I'm thinking, I've got some quotations from other great world leaders that are in there. Who am I to write a book about leadership? My leadership in my own family is not even great sometimes. And so I'm thinking about, this massive subject matter. And, I was talking with a publisher who was like, there's, 5,000 to 10,000 books a year that are written on the subject of leadership. And I'm like, well, maybe they need to write the book and then I just read their book. But I keep coming back to this thing that no, the Lord has called you to write something because nobody else has your story. Nobody else has your vantage point. And so as you're writing this, there's going to be some things that people can pick up that they wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. Did you ever have that experience when you were writing your book?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I thought about it, what's the significance of my story in the light of all the wonderful things that have happened in books that are better than mine from every, I guess, general aspect of what a great book is supposed to be. But that has no bearing on the fact that God has done in my life and then my own perspective and from my own viewpoint, how faithful he's been to me. And the thing is one of the things I learned very early on when I view my life and the call of God's face in my life is you don't ever know who you're talking to. You don't ever know who you're inspired. You see, because that was probably, I don't know, but somebody ministered to Billy Graham. Think about that.
Yes.
Somebody, every great person that you've ever seen, it was probably one person that said something to them that was a spark that set them off on that trajectory for greatness in the kingdom of God. So since we don't know that, then all we have to do is just simply not assume, but just move forward with faith, knowing that whatever God has done in our lives, it has significance and it has importance. It can always inspire someone, and we just never know.
That's interesting because you were talking about Billy Graham, and as I have been following the story, there was a revivalist who was preaching, and the revivalist, his name we don't even know. I mean, we know his name, but I don't even know his name. Most people don't even know his name, and he was just going around preaching revivals and not seeing a ton of fruit that resulted from his work, but he was being faithful to what God had called him to. And one of the last days of the revival, Billy Graham came forward and received Christ. And so this revivalist goes off and he's continuing to preach and, have a moderately, successful ministry, faithful to the Lord. And so that's a success in its own. But then Billy Graham, after coming to faith, you can follow the legendary story of his life and how many people he impacted. And so that was incredible to see.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that is a great comment. I want to maybe hear out a little bit more in some of the experiences, because I was watching your videos last night and I was thinking, man, he's at First Baptist Dallas. I'm looking at some of my friends who are there, and you've been all over the world. You've sang, you've done different things, different stories. But how is that little faithfulness? How have you seen that? The Lord showed you that being faithful in the small thing has led to bigger things, or the big thing, or become the thing that is important.
Well, what I found? I found the greatest blessings that have come to my life haven't come from my planning. We want to make plans, You do. They have happened for me from the simplest acts of service. Just being honest with you. They've happened by mistake. They just happened by me showing up daily, being faithful, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place where God opens all the doors.
Mm.
One of the most amazing things, and this is in my book, was you were a little group in Hampton, Virginia. Our church put on a concert called Gospel Fest at Hampton Institute, and they invited Reba Rambo and the Rambos and Dannyville Hall, who was the lead singer of Andre Crouch, but she had become a solo artist at this point. Well, I'm there sitting in this place on this field, and who in the world does Dannyville Hall come and sit down beside other than me?
Mm.
I'm so nervous. The second chapter of Acts, the group, is playing on the system, and I'm so nervous.
I love me some second chapter of Acts now.
They're singing, hear the bells ringing, this sing.
Yes, the Easter song. Come on.
But I'm so nervous that I said, I love that song. That I said, that's second actor of Chaps. And man, I was so embarrassed that I had, inverted the actual, instead of saying second chapter of Acts, I said second actor of Chaps. And I was so embarrassed, but I was so nervous. But man, the following Sunday night, we had a concert, and she saw us in concert, and that led to us being her backup band on the road for her, and us doing a demo, and her taking that demo to Billy Ray Hearn and Sparrow Records. That didn't work because she ended up leaving there. But that demo turned into the thing that opened the doors for us to naturally get a deal. So small things like that. We just being faithful, being in position, being ready, and let God do the rest. Let God do the rest. And one of the other amazing stories that happened for me was, most recently, many years after being in ministry for a long time, we had our heyday in the 80s with 5 records on the radio with Benson Records, where we had incredible favor and success with radio stations. Andy Abbey was our radio promoter, and man, we had 6 #1 singles. Amazing run of time. And we were in that era where you actually had albums. We had albums first, which are vinyl. Then we had CDs, cassettes, and then CDs, and so forth and so on. They actually sold those. And you actually had a booking agent who you could get to book you in churches on Sunday mornings and Sunday nights. And it was a steady thing that happened. But all that changed over time. And most churches now, they'll even bring in outside artists. They have their own everything. They've got their own band. They really have their own record labels now. So all of that changed. But in the course of time, I found myself just still sticking to what God had called me to do, but having to do other things on the side. And one of those things was I ended up working for a company called Tackle, which was it's an Uber of anything, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah.
I was doing something as simple as putting up flat screens. This was my specialty: flat screens and light fixtures, because they paid the most, and then I could do them the quickest. But that job and me being faithful to that job led to me working by surprise for Kathy Ely Gifford. And that moment turned into a year later into her contacting me saying, I believe God wants you to be back in music in a bigger way, and offering me the role of Moses in a movie. And man, it just opened it was like a whole rebirth and all kinds of new doors. But it was, to some people, they would consider that a detour from their purpose. But I just believe that as long as you seek God every day, you're always on track with His purpose, as long as you stay submitted and committed to His purpose.
Now, do you have any of those stories inside of this book?
Oh, absolutely, and many more. so many more just like that. And I guess the statement that I made about this book is that, when you read these things, some people are going to think, oh no, that can't be true, because it just couldn't happen that frequently, that things like that happen for someone. Some people would call it serendipity or whatever else. I just say, I would say this, when I read it, I realize that the way that these things happen in my life just really defy statistical probability. It really does.
Yes.
I lived it, and I'm still living it. And this is a book that's still being written, because things that have happened since that are just amazing stories that they're similar to the things that I've already written.
Yeah.
Well, that certainly gives a sense of why people enjoy this show. Very engaging, very heartfelt. We will return to the conversation in a few moments, but first, let's thank our sponsors and you for all your awesome support. Moody Radio's Dawn and Steve Morning Show, Life Action Ministries, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and Holt International. Thanks so much to our partners who make such a difference.
Thanks, Jason. This is Dawn.
And this is Steve of Don and Steve in the Morning on Moody Radio. You can find us online at donandsteve.org, or you can listen through the Moody Radio app.
And as friends of the Erskine Music Show, we always enjoy the variety of topics our friend has on his show.
So, on behalf of our show, thanks, Erskine, for bringing great Christ-centered topics to the people.
All right, let's get back to the show. This is where it gets good.
Yeah, when we got together for lunch, we were talking about some of those things, and as the preacher says, don't call me lucky, call me blessed.
You're right about that. I like that.
So, yeah, one of the things that was so encouraging about your story, and you were talking about going around and traveling and going to churches, and a lot of churches these days they have their own worship team, they have their own worship style, they have their own record label, they do everything on their own. And so I still travel around to churches, and I'm putting together. Been to Kansas, been to Iowa recently. Lord willing, headed down to Florida here very soon. And it is interesting when you're talking to different church leaders. Where do you fit in that? How do you, because you're the outside guy, you're coming in and you haven't been on the worship team. You don't know all the players. You don't know all the different things that are there. But one of the things that always encourages me is that the Lord has given me a message. The Lord has given me a way of seeing the world that is important for me to bring that wherever I'm at and to share that with people and not be ashamed and certainly not be afraid of what the Lord has called me to.
Amen. You're absolutely right. And I feel that same way. I feel like I do have ultimately I have a story to tell that few people have lived or experienced. And I think that I, as a forerunner, can give them some kind of a heads up on just how good God is, and that is, and I do get to do that. Just not, but at one point you can imagine it was every weekend, two different engagements per weekend. There was a whole different scenario then. Yeah.
Sure.
I'm grateful for the churches that still bring me in. So yes, I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
And so I was going to ask you about that. You have obviously this book. Are you doing a speakers tour with the book, or are you doing book and music, or what does that look like for you these days?
Well, for the most part, that's what I'm doing. It's both combined. Typically, the few things that I've had most of the time what someone would have me to do is to come in and do a few songs for a Sunday morning service and then share a message based around my book and my experiences. So, yeah, that's the typical format for what people have me come in to do now.
So you have a team of people that reaches out to folks and says, hey, he's going to be in this area, or how does that look like in the world?
I didn't before that, but I just connected with Gene Schmidt recently.
Okay.
And so he's helping me with that. So I'm really happy about that because we really do all need to be a part of a network of believers who can help each other. And so I'm really grateful for that. Yeah.
Gene Schmidt with Christian Songwriters Musicians International. If you don't know who that is, you can look up Christian Songwriters Musicians International. Gene Schmidt. He and I were on the phone yesterday talking about some upcoming events that we want to be a part of and some people that we wanted to reach out to and just encourage in the faith. We were able to sit down together, you, myself, Julie Branham, Gene Schmidt, and have lunch together and talk about some of this book, some of what God is doing in your life, in our ministries, and what you're seeing in this generation. Now, this is kind of, talk show gold for me, because I've not been around as long as you have, but you've been able to span a couple of decades, 4 decades or so in the Christian music industry. How have you seen it change, and how have you seen ministry in general? Because you're an author, you've been in theatrical productions. How have you seen ministry shift over the years to now where we're at in 2024? What are some of the things that you've seen?
Well, from a musical standpoint, I would say this. In the time when I was really more involved in ministry, it seems that there was a shift from what they call an artist to worship leader. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
I think it does.
That was one point where everything that came out of Christian music was, for the most part, there were artists who had songs that were basically about life, and they were kind of like sermons put to song, so to speak. That was my experience. And that was the way that I wrote and not the way I ministered also. And then, you had the Integrity Music movement down in Mobile, Alabama, and it shifted so that it became more about just worship songs in general. So even the subject matter of the songs were less directed towards life events, but just simply praising and worshiping God. So I guess that's probably the biggest, that's the biggest change that I've seen on the music scene in general, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Jesus Music? I think is what it's called. It's the history of a version of the history of Christian music, Christian contemporary music.
And I didn't see that. I need to check it out though. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it chronicled some of those transitions that took place around the time of Michael W. Smith. You have Amy Grant. You have some people that are starting to come to the forefront that are, commanding larger audiences. And then this movement of praise begins to take place here. And you've got the early pioneers and some of the groups that you had mentioned, some of the ones that you had talked to. And there's really not an industry that is there. It's just people who are going out. They love the Lord, coming from the Jesus movement, and they're serving the Lord with their energy, passion, the songs that they're writing. And then that begins to catch on. You begin to have this shift right around the time of Michael W. Smith, where he's bringing people together around I'm coming back to the heart of worship. And it begins to be a flourishing of the worship movement in the sense that now people are singing and crying out to God in these stadium types of events. And you begin to see the proliferation of writing that takes place in that area where people are writing songs of worship to God, where the church can grasp it. And now it seems like, a pretty steady business model for writers and for the church is to get one of these popular songs, and then all the churches will sing it. And so on one hand, I totally see what it is that you're saying, because if I go and I play 10,000 Reasons, most churches in most places will know that song. And so without having to be in that context, without having to know the band, I can pretty well, send them a couple of notes, pick up, and then here we are. Or How Great Is Our God, or songs of that nature. One that we do now is Gratitude. A lot of churches have done that song, and so they know that song and they're familiar with that song, and they want to have the familiar that is coming to them. But I, to your point, Billy, am a writer who writes from an artist's vantage point. I consider myself to be a music revivalist. And so I was having a funny conversation with somebody, and you'll appreciate this. I had a funny conversation with somebody yesterday, and I was like, man, I love Mav City, Elevation, some of the things they're doing. Don't necessarily get theology all the time, but after about 5 or 6 minutes of the song, I start getting incredibly bored. And then I start getting antsy. And then I start thinking, well, I should still be worshiping the Lord, but we've been singing the same thing over and over again. When I come to bring fire in my song, they're right at around 3 minutes, 4 minutes long. And I have a message that comes either before the song or after the song, but I want to deliver the song and then I want to get to the message. And so I'm geared totally different than the spontaneous, let's just sit and soak for an hour. And I was just, not that some of that's not okay, but I'm geared toward that artist that is writing a song that is like, I'll put this in the middle of people who are talking about the Democrats and Republicans, and then I'll let them deal with consequences of what I just said.
Well, you probably already know that when you hear that sound, there's music on the way. After all, this is kind of a music show. Sit back and enjoy. All the music can be easily found on your favorite digital distribution channels. Turn up the volume and here we go.
It is the Erskine Music Show, so let's get some Erskine music on here. Hey, how about Dancing Big Head has been telling me that he wanted to dance the night away. All right, Big Head. All right. I understand. I get the point.
Look up, people. It's time to sing out loud. But we're not ashamed. We're lifting up his name. Come on, people. We're gonna sing out loud. But we're not ashamed. We're lifting up his name. Moving forward, pressing onward, bolder, stronger. Jesus, only Savior. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna raise him like a party. Just dance to the music. Nothing but love. we do this. Yeah, Jesus reigns. Let all the people shout. We wanna praise. It's what we're all about. Like David danced, jumping all around. Our God reigns. Worship and bow down. Yeah, we're moving forward, pressing onward, bolder, stronger. Jesus, only Savior. Just dance, everybody. Come on. We're gonna praise Him like a party. Just dance to the music. Feel the music. Let them pull up. It's how we do this. They wanna know what we're not afraid. They wanna know where our hope is found. They wanna know what we're dancing around. Jesus, Jesus. They wanna know what we're not afraid. They wanna know where our hope is found. They wanna know what we're dancing around. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna praise Him like a party. Just dance to the music. Let them pull up. It's how we do this. Just dance, everybody. Feel the music. We're gonna praise Him like a party. Just dance to the music. This is how we do. Let them pull up. It's how we do this. Just dance, everybody. We're gonna praise Him like a party. Just dance to the music. Let them pull up. It's how we do this.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I'm the same way. I'm still focused. I mean, I've never, quite frankly, I have never, this is honest, I've never written a pure worship song. Just haven't. It's just, like I said, I guess you musicians would get bored more than that with just people in the general public. It's, I mean, I'm being honest with you. I mean, when
Yeah, I know. We're
I
two
just
peas in a pod.
the chorus goes over and over and over and over and over again, it's like, I mean, yeah, a 3 or 4 minute song is my thing too, and I'm focused in my message. I'm not knocking that because, man, think about it. If somebody can enjoy that, and man,
Oh,
and they are
absolutely, absolutely. Don't hear either one of us knocking that.
standing there singing that over and over again, that's fine because that's working for them. But I'm just so more driven by a purposeful message. I really am. That is, I wanted to deliver that. If you look at my records, like I said, my songs are basically sermons put to song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Same
my
here.
thing. Yeah.
Got a question for you. At the bottom of the screen. Should the church focus on praise and worship focused songs only, or also include inspirational songs during the church service? Just curious on your input on that. I think we've both kind of spoken to that, but you're the special guest here, so I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, and they do. And the interesting thing is that this is what I find, though. You know, like even when I go to churches, they'll have a worship set, but typically they will have me sing for the offertory and then a special, what they call a special before the sermon. But I just feel what I've found is everything has a purpose and worship has its purpose, but the impact of the delivery of a song that I've written, that I have lived, suffered through, a story that I've suffered, cried, and lived through has its own power, because this is a testimony now. There's a difference in me worshiping God because of who He is, and me giving a testimony about what He's actually done for me, and that is my vantage point. Yeah. And the other thing about that is, and then that may not be everyone else's vantage point, but they can identify with me declaring the goodness of God that's manifest in my life.
Yeah. And some of that does come down to your church tradition and your liturgy and various other things. I've been in a church context in which they had special music every Sunday, Good old Aunt Effie's going to get up every Sunday and she's going to try to warble through, how great thou art. And it's like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. And some liturgies are like, nah, we're not doing that. We're just going to keep it focused. We're going to keep it tight, prayers, different things.
Yeah.
And I think the Bible, and this is a discussion that we were having on the weekend show, there's no blueprint for when you do a church service, it has to look like this exactly, that we can tie ourselves to. And so in different faith traditions, they have more or less songs, hymns, and spiritual songs and edifying God's people and how that flows into the message or as part of the message. And so it is sort of a checkerboard approach that's out there, but I do appreciate churches. I will say, I do appreciate churches that still have some time for special music and opportunities to be able to minister in that regard, whether it be offertory or whether it be at the end of the service. I've done some things there as well, as people are getting ready to leave. So yeah, that's incredible. How can we be praying for you?
Well, I just pray for me that God will direct my steps. I mean, I know I pray that and I know that he's doing that, but I think that that's the best prayer I can ask from anyone, just that I would hear God's voice and walk in his ways, walk in obedience to his word and manifest his life with the balance of my days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got anything coming up with the Soul Choir?
Soul Choir?
Yeah. Julie?
Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't. No.
Okay.
How about you?
I don't, but this would be maybe cool for the audience to know that that's actually where I met you. And much to my shame, you look great, but this makes me look like an idiot. We were standing next to each other and we were singing a part for the Soul Choir where they were doing a special recording. I don't know if you remember this. And we showed up and you were singing, I was singing, and they kind of isolated the male voices. And I heard you singing. I was like, man, this guy, he has an incredible voice. I know why they picked him to come here. I wonder who this guy is. And we started to talk with one another. I was like, oh, wait a minute. He's somebody. Somebody the Lord has been using to do this for a while. He didn't just show up today. I'm the new guy. He's been here for a minute. And so
that was a special day for that session. It really was, man.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And so we got a chance to know one another. And then we've started showing up in some common musical venues. And so that lets me know I'm starting to come up now.
Oh no, man, you're doing awesome, man. You're doing awesome things, and God has blessed you and opened doors for you. And I'm really happy for you. But I love the format of your show, man.
As only he can. Thank you so much for that.
You're a great host, man. You really are.
Look, I'll send the Venmo later for those precious comments. But I kind of got into this during COVID, and it's kind of one of those things that I was traveling so much. I never paid attention to social media. I can maybe even shamefully say I don't even really pay attention to social media that much now. But the only way that I could connect with people and the only way that I could interact with people was through this medium during the time of COVID. And so I started doing it. And I remember my son, he came in one day and he was looking at me and he's like, Dad, your show is so bad. It's terrible. Teenager. And I was like, it's not very good. And so I started just add little things to the show to like make it interesting and like make it something. And then I started getting interested in just doing hours of research for the topics that I was talking about. And then I just started really enjoying it to the point now where I cannot put this show down. I love it so much. And I get a chance to interview guests like yourself. There's artists who tune into the show that I will meet all across the country. Like, hey, I saw that show with this guest on. I saw this show with this guest on, and it really encouraged me. And so, brother, you have no idea how many artists that are out there, especially independent artists, maybe even signed record label artists who are watching this or will watch this. And they will come back and they will say, man, that was a blessing to hear what it was that he said, because maybe at one point I felt like my story didn't matter, or maybe I felt like I was small. And to hear you say some of the things you said today, it just made a big impact, I know, in many people's lives. And so thank you so much for coming on the show. Can I pray for you before we leave?
We have come to the end of this episode. Don't miss a final word from Erskine.
Hey guys, tell your friends about this show. And as always, I look forward to your interactions. Please contact us as you are able. We love to hear from you. Okay, friends, let's go and make a difference.